All right, Arturo. This video is for my buddy Arturo. Going to be helping him out with some of his engineering homework. Um, just want to get you started on in Autodesk 360. Um, it's very similar to Inventor, but there are some differences, and I'm much more comfortable in Inventor. So if you see me fumbling around looking for tools, that's really the only reason at this point. But really, the big idea is that you want to start off with a sketch. You're going to dimension that sketch, and then you're going to extrude that sketch, and it falls into that anything in Autodesk 360 or any CAD software really kind of falls into that category. You draw a picture, you put numbers on that picture, and you extrude it, right? And so I'm looking at your picture, and I'm going to look at that side view that's on the, or I guess, yeah, it's the left view, and it kind of makes a little boat shape in that left view. And I'll just start off with your kind of, it makes this shape. And I'd just like to make that outline. And so when you're doing this, you see how it kind of pops in there with a dotted line. If I click on that dotted line, it's going to be constrained to that dotted line. It'll lock it to that. So whenever I'm doing a sketch, I try to make sure that it's not getting constrained to anything unless I purposely want it to be constrained. So I don't want it constrained to that. And so I'll click there and then up a little bit. Again, I don't want it constrained to that. I do want it at horizontal, and then I'm going to go across. If I clicked it there, it's going to constrain it to the midpoint of that second segment that I drew and go up. This one I do want constrained to this dot though, because it is in the drawing. It is in line with it. And so that's kind of a rough outline up and down of that side view that you have. And this is how I would start this part is from that side view, and then do an extrusion lengthwise, and then start adding all the flanges on later on. But this will give you kind of the starting point, and then what I'm hoping you'll do is come back to me with more questions if you have questions going forward. And so at this point, we've got to add some fillet in the drawing, and he's got it in diameter, done in diameter, but the fillet tool is actually measured in radius. So if we're going to click that fillet tool right there, we click here for that arc. That fillet tool is measured in radius, and so we want to make sure that you're dividing that by 2 because he puts the dimension in there as diameter. And so I'm just going to hit divide by 2 in there. And so it'll give me that radius in there. Okay. Same thing with this one. This one might give me an error though, because it does go all the way to the edge. So what I had to do for this particular one is I had to do an arc, a 3-point arc, and I connected it from this point, and I made it tangent to this line in here. And then I used the trimming tool to trim off that extra piece right there. And then I could come back in and dimension that arc. Where are my dimensioning tools? Let's go cancel. All right, inspect. Let's see if it'll just let me. Sketch dimension, great, there we go. Radius. Again, it's in radius. Is this document in inches? Does it say? I don't see any units on it at this point. I'm not seeing units on it, so I'm just gonna, if it's inches, just make sure you put inches. If it's millimeters, make sure you put millimeters in there. I would think it was inches because you're probably not gonna have a hole that's 0.11 millimeters. So let's see, you want that radius, again, going from that side is going to be 2.3125, and we're going to divide that by 2. All right, and so it's kind of getting funky in here because we're missing some of the other dimensions in there, and so we've got to move some things around. So I'm going to move this guy. Well, let me move this guy. Yeah, there we go. That's a little bit better. We'll just try to keep it proportionate until we get some actual dimensions in there. And then you have one last fillet in here, and this one's actually done in radius. And that's really kind of the things that you gotta watch out for is when you're putting a radius in there, or when you're putting a fillet in there. Fillets are done in or arcs are typically done in radius, and then the full circles are typically done in diameter. And so I'm not sure why in that drawing on the left hand side it's giving you it's giving you the diameter. You just keep in mind that you pay attention to things like that, because that's usually where people kind of start messing up. Sorry. So we've got to start putting some other dimensions in here. So I'm going to now look at that front view, and we've got to add some of these dimensions together to get that full length of it. So I'm going to do an outer dimension now. There it is, sketch dimensioning. I'm going to go from here all the way across. Okay, and that one is going to be, it's a little fuzzy on my end, so I'm just going to give it my best estimate. So I'm literally just adding the length of it because he doesn't have an overall length measurement in there, so you've got to add all of those together to get that length. Oh man, and it messed everything up. That's all right. So we've just got to pull all of our, just means that we've got to move our sketch to be within our parameter here. 1 millimeter, okay. I'm going to move this guy in a little bit more. Oh. This is interesting. There we go. Like I said, they're all really similar, like Autodesk, but there are definitely some like strange differences. There we go. That's what we want right there. Boom. Okay. So sometimes you just got to play around with it to get it right. And then it doesn't look like this line. You see how it kind of goes away from that edge right there? So that line should be horizontal. So there should be some constraints in here where, or it should be vertical. So there should be some constraints in there, yeah, where we can constrain this to be. There we go. All right, so now that's perfectly straight up and down. You can see that constraint is already up on that guy. And then, yeah, we can just continue going around and dimensioning it. So what I would do is I would finish figuring out all of your dimensions for these edges, and kind of as much as your placement as possible. I would not worry about the holes that are going to be here and here. I would just fully dimension this thing and then extrude it first. And so in your email, it didn't sound like you guys had done the extrusions yet. So you're going to hit finish sketch. I like to do an extrusion from an angle. Here's your solid extrusion. Select your profile, and it should be the width across. And again, he doesn't have an overall width, so he's making you do some of the work of adding and subtracting. And let's see if we can get. He doesn't. He's really making you work on this guy, isn't he? All right, so does that line up there? Yeah, so I believe your extrusion is going to be 3.1875. And I'm getting that info from the top view that goes all the way across of 3.1875. All right. So you hit OK, and it'll extrude it. And so now you have this solid to kind of work from. And now you're working from kind of a subtractive model. When you're done with some of the extrusions, the plan will be to use the shell tool on this model, but I would not use it yet because you still need to do some work on this face right here to get that little section cut out. And so from here on out, you would just be adding sketches. So for instance, like to this face, you're gonna add a rectangle here and dimension that rectangle relative to your current model. And once you dimension that rectangle, you'll select it, and then you can change the direction. Let's see, I want to go the other direction though. There we go. And that extrusion will cut. You'll dimension that extrusion correctly, and it'll kind of cut that end on it. So before you do use the shell tool, I would get this section in there because it's on the outside of it. And then the shell tool is super cool because he gives you a shell thickness, right? Where's your shell? 1 point or 0.105. Let's see, 0.105. And it will hollow that. It'll hollow that guy out for you, and you may have to do some extra cleanup on this because I believe that's got a shell to it as well. So, but that really wouldn't be too hard. There's a couple ways that you could attack that. You may be able to use. Let's see if we undo that. Try that shell tool again. Yeah, there we go. I think that'll do it. 0.105. Yeah. Yeah. So it looks like we got some. I don't think that'll be an issue once you create your shell in there. So, well, I don't know. It looks like it might be shelled. So that'll get you at least started, and then why don't you email me with some specific questions, and then I can post another video pretty quickly of any specific questions on the model, and we'll just kind of keep going through. Hopefully this helps. Hopefully this gets you started.